All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to today's Python Hour. And today we are going to be talking about Python, Rust, and Docker. And I had to bring someone that knows a lot about Python and knows a lot about Rust and Docker. So here with me is Francesco. Francesco, please introduce yourself.
Thank you so much, Sofia, for inviting me. I'm super excited for this collaboration for this event together. When you mentioned Rust, Docker, and Python, I really couldn't decline this, and I'm really happy to have a nice conversation. I hope you can have a meaningful conversation for everyone who is here. If you're here in the chat, just say hi. And yeah, Sophia, whatever you want, you can start. I'm developer advocate at Daily Dev. I do many things. I also had the honor to become a Docker captain. I think it was 2021 now. So I think we are close to the anniversary. It was the end of May. So it's about 4 years. And then
Wow.
we can say that I've used Python professionally for 3 years while I was working as a full stack developer for the European Space Agency, despite what people might think on Twitter. Sometimes I make jokes about Python. And and then, yes, I really went into the rabbit hole with Rust. So super excited about this conversation. I really like the way we can connect different technologies. This is why I'm a fan of Docker. And so let's do it. Thank you, Sophia.
Also. So the reason why I wanted to have this stream was because I saw an article from Libcell blog where they said that, well, according to the article, it was more, it was around how Rust improves the performance in Python, and I was like, ah, so that's why I wanted this stream. Okay, so my first question for you now is um, do you really think that Rust can fix the performance problem that Python has? Or is it just like hype?
Yeah, thank you so much for the question. I don't think it's a hype because if this was hype, it was just something. I think hype is more related to frameworks or I don't know, a library. Languages are not hype. I mean, you can be curious about a programming language, but we are going into more lower level things. Well, C is not hype. It's a language, so a language can be used for something. You don't use Python because there is a hype. You use Python because there is an ecosystem. There are reasons why you use it. But anyway, so the short answer is that no, it's not hype. Rust is well known for increasing performances because this is why it was built. Python was built for readability, for example, for having something which is readable and very, very close to developers, and it was a great idea. Python is a bit newer, but the way Rust is a bit newer. Rust turned 10, I think, yesterday or 2 days ago. So the first version of Rust has been released 10 years ago, which is not that much, but not even that young. You know, it's a sort of teenager Rust in the language ecosystems. And yes, Rust can be used for increased performance, but I still think Python is a very valid language, and I'm not the only one who thinks this, because we will talk about maybe some use cases. And the reasons why there are many different languages is that depending on what you want to do, you will use a different language. For example, I just created a Twitch bot in Python. I could have done that in Rust. I'll stream about this soon, probably. I used Python in that case because it basically does the job, and there is an easy Python library to have input output on Twitch. So this might be also interesting for you to check it out. And I used the language based on libraries, and this is why Python is so powerful in data science, because there are plenty of libraries about data science, and that's the reason why people use it.
Wow, I see. So I haven't tried Rust. I haven't tried Rust personally, but I've been using Python for quite a while, and I really don't get when people say the performance issue, because the only performance issue that I have noticed when using Python, once again, is just junior level stuff in Python, would have to be the concurrency. So besides that, I haven't really taken note of any performance issue per se. But have you encountered any performance issues like when it comes to Python?
Yes, so I have an experience in this because, as I said, I used the Python. So just to give me some bit of context that might be also interesting for people who are listening. So I worked on a project called the Copernicus project. This Copernicus project has some satellites that they go around the globe. They took some very heavy pictures of Earth. It can be also 8 gigabytes per picture, and they make like thousands of pictures a day, just to give you an idea of the volume. Like everything you do, it just scales in a weird thing.
Yeah.
And I was using Python because the Python is great for example, to analyze metadata, for web scraping. It was just perfect. Honestly, I think I haven't pushed Python to the limits in terms of web server, for example. Probably I will not use Django can of course be used. It's amazing. I will personally will not use, or maybe not sure if I would use Python if I know that my application will be used by 10 million people, because there are some bottlenecks. But you see these bottlenecks just at very high level. I know that people, they like to talk about this, but this is just an aspect of the language that every language has their downsides. Because now, if you start talking about, I don't know, assembly or C, I would say that's very performant. But then if you
Yeah.
need 2 weeks to implement a feature, is it this really what you want or not? A motorbike can be quite kind of quick compared to the price. Is this what you really need? Maybe you don't need it. So sometimes, we have developers, so we like to talk about technology. It's like, the
Yeah.
sports, and we talk about like, people who like football, they like to talk, hey, this player is better than this one.
Yeah.
It might be for some things. Usually, people who really talk about this is just, people they get excited maybe about a language, and they like to argue rather than coding. If they will spend if you spend the time that you spent arguing about why a programming language, maybe you don't like it, maybe you will be way more performant. That's my point of view, of
Yes.
course. Of course, if you want to have fun, that's another story. But if you ask me this from a pure technical perspective, I never encountered any issues with it. Python is very usable, and usability is a great thing because we are currently using a language to code. So that's that's
Yeah.
it. That's, of course, is the real Francesco, not the Francesco mocking Python on Twitter. But this is what I really think about it.
Nice, nice, nice. So, as someone that has used Python and Rust, where do you think Python thrives? I'm sorry, Rust thrives in that Python fails at?
What do you mean by like Rust can help Python?
Yes, like okay, there are some parts of Python that they're exceptionally good, like when it comes to data science and data analysis compared to JavaScript. So when comparing Rust and Python, what are some parts of programming that you think that Rust is by far better than in Python, and what are some parts I think that Python is better than in Rust?
Yes. So first of all, I wrote an article some days ago on why you should learn Rust. So basically, some of the pinpoints are those. So in terms of performance, I personally like the experience of coding in Rust. I think that it's a bit harder to get started, but once you get used to the compiler, the Rust compiler, it's
Yeah.
amazing. Like the how it handles the errors is game changing, and you will probably suffer when you'll go back on another language because it's on point. Like when you have a mistake, you have like, hey, you wrote this, change this to that also with some green pluses, or like remove this part or use this library instead. Like sometimes I'm I'm really like and we know that as developers this is really helping our process in writing code, because we really need like to know like what we did wrong,
Yeah,
why we did it wrong, how this can be used, okay, why this is giving me an error, because we'll have errors anyway. Rust, Python, JavaScript, Elixir,
very
Golang, we
true.
always have errors for when we write code, of course. Use AI, web code, but how Rust helps you when you have an error, and you will have it, once you experience it, you say, okay, this is like, it's like maybe, and especially if you had an experience with a language that, I don't know, maybe it gives you some bit of like random errors, and you at some point we sort of get used to this, okay, and
Yeah,
this should
yeah,
not be like that. But we are used to that, like, okay, we have a backtrace and we absolutely nothing, and then we go and check the code. This is what we usually do. My usual experience is this one. Once you experience the Rust compile, say, okay, this case, some there is a language who actually like they help you for real. Like, so this is one of the reasons. And then the fact that it can really handle concurrency very well. I was a bit also here because
that's
I did
true.
concurrency in the past. Concurrency equal something scary. Usually, this is the equation, right? The experience that I had so far in Rust, I also made some videos on this topic. It seems even too easy. Let's say how it handles it. I think it's easier because Rust is a bit recent. Because in the past
Mm,
we didn't have. I'm old enough that we didn't have PCs and CPUs with multiple CPUs. This is a sort of new for me in terms of let's say programming things. So before it was even harder because there were not as many like multi-core and multi-thread processors. Now I have a Ryzen 9, I don't know, 32 cores. I don't even know how many cores I have. But before, writing a programming language for something multi-threading, if there are not so many CPUs, it was maybe a bit harder. They had to find some things. So this might be one of the reasons. And I think that's this is one of the reasons why I think that it will be worth it. Learning, I think we all agree that learning a programming language that is performant might be worth it. It can be C, C++, or Rust. Another story would be maybe it will be a bit harder to learn it. Okay, but
yeah,
I think that at the moment on the market, we are recording this. At the moment of the market, if you want to try a performant language, in that case, Rust is be the best choice. If you want to just do web development and just want to do a front end, probably it's not your the first thing that comes up in your head. But in terms of performance and also like something that we want to learn new, learning a performant language, I think it's something that at some point we might do, right? And then maybe we want also a language which is readable and usable. That's on the story. Rust is not so that beginner friendly. So, and I say this a bit sad about this, but it's true. But that's why I create videos to help you to learn it. That's why I'm here to help.
well, and I was about to ask about the learning curve when it comes to Rust, because I have watched a lot of your Rust videos. I have, okay, I think I got the cheat sheets that you shared, and he also has an upcoming book on Rust that I literally cannot wait for it to come out. So I wanted to ask the learning curve of Rust. How was your experience learning Rust? What's were your challenges? And do you think that Rust is harder to learn compared to Python?
Yes, so the first time that I checked Rust, I was scared. Saying, "Okay, what the hell is this?" And let's just close the thing. So this was my experience. So if you say this, I will never neglect this. I could neglect this for marketing reasons, but I prefer to be honest. So the first impact I also had is a bit weird because it looks like sort of JavaScript plus Java. So it's verbose as Java, semicolons, but I don't know, like it has more like a JavaScript style, I think, also in how you write function and things. And so it's very so a language which is verbose. It seems like another programming language because, for example, if you switch from JavaScript to Python,
Yeah.
it's like speaking like Italian and then Chinese. They are so different that you say, okay, this is something else. It's different. Now let's go and learn this new whole new stuff. Okay. Rust, I think, has a problem that it looks like another language. So it's like, Chinese and Japanese. Okay, they look similar. And you say, what is this? Like, I understand Chinese, but I can't understand Japanese. What is this?
Yeah.
So I think this is the vibe that I had. It seems something familiar, but it's not. So just to give an example, if you write let x equal 5 semicolon is a valid statement in Rust, that
Yeah.
variable is immutable. Just to give an idea. So if you're a JavaScript developer, you say, okay, what is this? I have a video on this, and we can talk more in details. But just to give an idea that it's very like shocking.
So it's easier for someone, like for a beginner, to learn Python than learning Rust. I never
Yes.
knew about that, because I know that Python and JavaScript, they are very, very similar. Like if you know JavaScript, understanding Python is like very, very easy, and versa. If you know Python, understanding JavaScript is very, very easy. But I did not know the curve from Python to Rust. Okay,
Okay. I
so now
want to answer
let's
in the meanwhile. Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
all right, so let's now bring in Docker into this equation. Okay, um yeah, so okay, before I ask the question I have in mind, what was your learning curve when it comes to Docker? And do you think that web developers should actually learn how to use Docker?
Yeah, I can't swear in a live stream, but I would say yes. Yes, you should learn Docker. I will not swear here. I will be polite. Um, I learned Docker, I think it was about 2016. And I was currently working on a game back then using Unity 3D. At some point, I had to create a backend. And I think the backend was in Java, I think, with a MySQL database. Then I said, okay, now I want to put this. It was like 10 years ago, so I was not like expert as now. So I said, okay, now I want to put this somewhere. How can I actually deploy for real? Like it was my real like first like deployment experience of an application. So
Yeah,
I tried to check stuff and things. And I ended up buying a Udemy course by Bert Fisher, which is also a Docker captain. I also met him in person. And I started to dive deep into this technology called Docker. And by the way, I had no social media presence, so I was not like influenced. It was me doing my own research. Say, okay, I want to deploy a backend in Java somewhere. What's the way to do it? So I started learning Docker, and I had some mind blowing haha moments. Talking about, of course, about 10 years ago. Now, probably now we have other cell, we have other like automatic things. Back then,
yeah,
understanding that you can put your code in a box that can be replaced and put somewhere on the internet, despite your operating system, I was also using a bit the Mac, a bit the Linux, a bit the Windows. It says, okay, this is exactly what I want. I want to learn it. And also because I like to understand how things work, and I like that is something agnostic. Now I'm learning Docker. I can do Rust and Docker. So Docker is a very agnostic and time resistant technology. I don't know how many technologies are here that after, I think the first version of Docker should be 2013, if I'm not wrong, or 2014. We are still here talking about Docker
yeah.
every day. So it's a very fascinating and powerful technology that adapts over time. Usually the languages, the frameworks, they change over time. Docker has been like at my side, and I really liked the idea that is not dependent on a single language. If you have I was thinking, now we can laugh about this, but I was thinking in 10 years ago, if I will have
Yeah.
to learn another programming language in 10 years, I can still use Docker. This is exactly what happened, because now I'm learning Rust and I can use Rust with Docker. So I predicted what would have been the idea. So that's the thing. And I remember like people like say like, oh, this is technology is not useful like 10 years ago. There are still some people who think that, but they are rare cases. There are some cases when you don't have to learn Docker, but that's probably another story. But let's say for the majority of people in tech, learning Docker is I think it's still very important, especially now that we have AI that can write a Python application, write a Docker file, write a Rust application. It's even more important now to understand what the hell is going on, because
I
now otherwise
agree.
we have something that we don't know. If you don't know Docker and you ask ChatGPT, okay, write me a Docker file, it will do it. Then what? Then what is everything doing? You should use it and learn it. So that's I think the point of view. And my learning curve of Docker has been really amazing. Is one I usually have no regrets in life, but I regret a bit the fact that while I was learning Docker, I was not doing these things streaming. Otherwise, probably my channel would have been like I had like 2,000 Docker videos, because I was learning Docker every day, 5 6 hours
Wow.
every day. So the fact that I don't have like I spent more time writing Docker files than making videos, which maybe is good now. But my learning curve has been very good, and I remember me dreaming about going to DockerCon, which is this official Docker event, one day, and this happened. I also won a prize, which is behind this green screen, and
Wow.
it has been basically a dream for me to participate in person after learning Docker and watching videos and say like, I was not even thinking about becoming a public speaker. I was thinking, oh, maybe just go there just as an attendee. I participated as a Docker captain and as a speaker, so this is how it ended, and I'm happy.
Wow. Talk about dedication. Wow. So my learning experience with Docker is really similar to yours. The second freelancing gig that was about 3 4 years ago that I had, they talked about Docker, and I was so confused on what Docker was really about. And back then, the only thing that I knew how to do was just little knowledge on Django and little knowledge on Python. So imagine you are an intern and they and you are seeing a Docker file, you are seeing AWS, and you are so lost. So yeah, I think after I got the whole idea, like after I got to understand what Django and Python was really all about, I started to explore Docker, and lately I have been learning Docker every day, back to back to back, and Docker is really fun. Okay, so last week I got to play around with a Python version that I did not have installed on my laptop. And I got to use that to run some code. Like I literally wrote both the code, um, install the Python version, everything on my terminal inside a Docker container, and that blew my mind. So yeah, I've been really
You will
experimenting
not
with
go
Docker.
back now. You will not go back. You will not. No, no, you will not install 10 versions. I don't even think it is possible to install like so many different versions on your PC. But this is the perfect use case. I want
Yeah,
to just try something. I want just to try a PHP script on my machine. I don't want to install PHP. I just want to try something. I just want to try Python 3.7, and I have Python 3. We had this mentality that you need to install something. Not don't let me
yeah,
get started with databases. I don't think there is a way to install Postgres 9, 10, and 12 on your machine. But with Python, with Docker, you can use different things, and it might work. So, especially like for trying things and trying versions, is unbeatable. Is great. Unless, and let's say that you have two jobs. One asks
yeah.
you Python 3, and one Python 3.7 because of specifics. What are you going to do? Buy another PC every time? Or,
No.
I mean, you can also use, this is a problem that has been solved 20 years ago with virtual machines. But then you need powerful PCs. So we still have that issue. That's the thing. So it's a problem that was already solved, but like with something which was way more expensive. And
Yeah.
in 99% of the cases, or maybe a bit less, but let's say you don't really need that power. I was working, just to give an example, while I was working at the European Space Agency, we had the policy that we had to use a virtual machine to deploy our stuff. We could not use Docker because virtual machines, you have a stronger isolation because it's
Yeah.
more, it's sort of physical, not really physical, but let's say almost physical. But that's a very edge case. Okay, so we had that use case. Usually people, they just want to create their application and then deploy it on the internet. They don't work for government or military. Probably in that case, the military, they want a virtual machine. It's fine. That's not the majority. We're not talking to them, of course, they know. Or maybe they have, I don't know, when you have something which is military or government, they have some weird requirements. I don't know. We
True.
need this PC locked in this vault. It's fine, but we are not talking about that use case. We are talking to people who want to learn programming, basically.
That's very, very true. And another use case I see for Docker is okay, like how the recent release of Python 3.14 that came out a couple of weeks ago, and you want to try that out, but you don't want to install it on your laptop to cause any issue to your current project. You can just do it on your Docker, test it out, see if it's fixed any bug that you used to have, and play around with it. Right now, I see Docker as like a little virtual machine on my laptop where I can play around with tools that I don't want to have on my laptop at the moment, including operating systems too.
Yes, this is a great use case, and as I said, once you understand how you can use Docker images and Docker containers to test out new stuff, you will probably never go back, and you will not
Yeah,
try and install something. Then you probably you uninstall. Maybe you are currently, I don't know, you are using Python 3.5 every day. You want to try something with Python 3.7. Then,
yeah,
but maybe I need to update. Then I need to downgrade because I'm sure that the works. No, you just create your normal Python things. You use the Python 3.7 version, like with the from at the top of an image. We can do a tutorial one day,
yeah,
and then you can try. I think I have some videos that when I show that if you switch a version, or I think it was with Node with top async function. If you switch version at the top, you see that the same code doesn't work. I don't know, for different versions of Node, for example. But you can try this with just changing a thing. And for example, for Node, we have NVM, which is a great tool to change versions in Node, but not all the languages they have this. Sorry, Sophia, but sometimes I do the example with Python. If now you want to run something in Python 2, probably you don't want to install it. Or maybe you have it, but it's a bit heavy, I would say. Okay.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. Very, 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 very true. Okay, so now, how do you think? Well, I feel like we've already answered this question, but I'm just gonna ask it again. So, let's say you build a project in Rust and Python, and you want to use Docker to sort of bring the projects together for deployment or something. How do you think Docker can do that? Yes, I know that we've talked about how Docker is good for doing that, but can you go into on that?
Yeah, sure. So I think the only project that that has a single language, everything works well. It's when we start our side projects and we are happy
Yeah,
and alone in our GitHub repository. In that case, you have a language. If you ever worked for a company, probably but I would say also, I would say always you will have to do with different technologies because maybe that project has been deployed with Python, that project has we are used Java, so it's normal for a company to use different languages and different technologies. That's absolutely fine. Only if you're no,
Yeah.
only in your little side project you decide, okay, I want to do this in JavaScript. Nobody is forcing you, and it's done. Usually you have different technologies, different frameworks, different languages. Docker is perfect for this. Is the dream because you can do multi-stage builds. You can build different images for different parts of. I think you made a video about this.
Yes.
So you can create different stages for an image, building different parts of your application. Each of the image can get something from another image, and then you have I think the best possible setup. Otherwise you should do the things separately, but we know as developers that when you start doing something on, I don't know, on a laptop, then something somewhere else, when you try to connect them, it will never work at the first time because on one laptop you use a different version, a laptop is a different operating system. This project has some dependencies, or unless you use a very well-known API, it's a bit hard, let's say, to do it. So that's a perfect use case. Or let's say that at some point, you want to add a custom web server. This is also
Yeah.
a great use case. There are some Python images that they have. I can't remember. It was called Unicorn. I can't remember. But in Python, you have some web servers, and you can try even different ones for production environment. So
Very true.
that's it.
Yeah. So, Fran, we have a question. Ismail asks, what are the advantages of using Docker containers over using virtual machines?
Hmm. Yes, this is one of my favorite questions about Docker. First of all, we need to understand that both they do a similar thing. Okay, so it's like getting a car or getting a truck. If you want to go, it's a very similar thing analogy. I don't know. Let's say that you want to have a picnic with your friends. Can you go with a huge truck? Yes, you just hope it, but that probably will be expensive. You need someone who is very capable of using them. It's very heavy. You don't know where to park it. Can you actually do a trip with your friends in a huge truck? Yes, you hope there is also some space, but then this will cost you a lot of money. Maybe it's
Mm.
better to go by bicycle if you want to just go to the river and enjoy with your friends. So this is an analogy that just came here in my mind at 12:33 p.m. Italy time. Virtual machines are heavy, and when something is heavy, it has a cost. This is why the companies they didn't sleep on Docker, because they can save money. Companies is all about money. So if you have a service that uses a gigabyte of RAM when it just needs 10 megabytes, and you say this to the CEO, say, you know what? Let's try Docker because they will spend less money. So that's the hard truth. Um, why? Because virtual machines, they are an full-fledged operating system inside another operating system. The virtual machines are basically living in a matrix. They think that they are running an operating system. It's not. It's us that we are running them inside a window. So it really gives me the matrix vibes. They don't know. A virtual machine doesn't know that it's a virtual machine.
Yeah.
A virtual machine thinks that it's an operating system running on hardware. This is what a virtual machine thinks. Docker is a different approach because at the end of the day, the containers are processes, are sort of Linux processes. They are Linux processes, single Linux processes. And so advantage of memory space disk. And I think but I think the best use case and why containers are really, I think, a better choice instead of VMs in the most of cases is the time to speed up. Because if I need, when developers, when we want to load a website because we want to try CSS. If
Yeah.
that takes 30 seconds every time you change a single thing in a CSS, you'll get frustrated and you want to hate your life. If you have a virtual machine that you need to speed up, to speed up and it takes 2 minutes or 1 minute every time, you'll probably have started to hate yourself. So virtual machines are great when you want to take a break. In that case, it's fine. You can go start with the machine, and then you go and grab a coffee. And also, I think the last reason is this. Docker has been successful because you know what? Spoiler: containers were not invented by Docker. Containers,
Really?
containers they existed before. I think something called LXC. The thing that Docker did is that it democratized and gave a standard of containers. So when you give a standard, I can also say the story of Docker if you want. You have a standard procedure. The act of writing a Docker file and writing the instructions and then build the image and then run the container, it's standardized. If you, and we were using virtual machines at the European Space Agency, so I know what I'm talking about. When you have a procedure for a virtual machine, you usually have the virtual machine guy that has a procedure that gets updated every time. And that's okay. But the way that guy, that person, creates the procedure to deploy something on the virtual machine is something custom, is not standardized. That's the key. That's why the reason why Docker has been so wide adopted, because we can speak the same language. There is a from, there is a work there. It's standardized. If you write a virtual machine procedure, then you have to explain me what this procedure does, why you wrote this, why you did that. If you give me a Docker file, we are speaking the same language. And then I'll go and check the Docker documentation and understand what is going on in there. And that's a huge shift, because then we are speaking the same language. You don't have to explain why you wrote something instead of something else, or why you are downloading this using this with a URL command instead of that, and all the dependencies. That's the reason.
Oh, wow. Wow. I think I just learned a lot from this question. Thanks for answering the question, and thank you, Fran, for answering the question. So I never knew that that containers were not created by Docker. I just thought it was part of the whole Docker experience stuff. Wow. This was really, really insightful. Now,
One day I'll tell the story of Docker, but that's for another part. But it's a fascinating, and I think one of the best ideas in open source. But yes, if you drop that you want the story of Docker, I will say. Otherwise, I will not.
I was just about to say that I want to throw away the topic and just talk about Docker, but I'm not going to do that. Yeah, I mean, Docker is really, really fun when you start learning about it, breaking it down and seeing the use cases in your day to day.
Use cases for Docker in day to day?
Yes, like for a developer.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and I think Docker really shines in local development, because you can test things locally. The Docker Compose, I think, is the best tool to try things using different technologies on your machine. I think
Sure.
it's unmatched. I have videos using, if you want to change database, you want to, let's say that you have a PostgreSDB, and now you want a MySQL DB. Probably this without Docker, it might take some time. You need to install MySQL, you need to understand. Probably in Docker, this might also be a good idea for a video to, let's say, switch database, which is something that can happen. Let's say, I don't want to use this database anymore. I want to use another database. I think in Docker, you can do this in minutes, just changing you need to understand changing, of course, the database connection. So maybe a bit of things. You can use AI for that. But then in the Docker file, you need to explain just a different image. You try Docker Compose up, and you can see. So usually as developers, we try different things when we code. We don't have like something static without dependencies. And again, if this is your first HTML file, probably you don't need Docker, because you write some tags and that's it. But
You don't.
usually we like to explore things, because this is what developers are. We want to try, like for example, you said that you wanted to try something different, a different versions of Python. So as developers, we are curious. We like to try this because we saw this on Twitter, or we read an article, or when we watched a video. Docker really solves this issue of
Yeah.
trying new things, and also I think it really simplifies the even the local development. Unless you are using always the same technology over and over again every day, in that case you might not use it. Let's say that you write just JavaScript code all day long. You're not, let's say, you focused on a single technology. Probably in that case, if you invented Python, you don't need Docker to write Python code, because because for you
That's true.
is obvious stuff. You can even see Docker as something heavy that is slowing you. But again, those are edge cases of super experienced people, or people, I don't know, they write, I don't know, you invented the Ruby on Rails. You don't need Docker for Ruby on Rails. You know what you're doing. You know the dependencies. But
Yeah.
for most of the people, we maybe we are trying this for the first time, and we're not super expert in that field. Okay. And for example, something that I really like about Docker is that it also unifies the run. If you want to run a similar concept of npm start, if you use PHP, do you know what is the exact command to run the PHP command? I don't know, maybe PHP something, but you don't know. The fact that you can write just docker run is similar to when we have an npm start, and then we don't care about the framework. So you have a single command, because if I never wrote in a language, I don't even know how to run the the actual thing. In Rust, you use, for example, cargo run. If you never wrote a Rust program, you probably don't know. But if you know Docker, you can type docker run. So this is another thing that can be useful. They're all small things, and then you probably can check the Docker file. You can say, okay, the CMD at the end, it says cargo run. So you also learned the how you can run something in Rust, but you didn't have to. So that's I think this is are one of the good reasons.
Yes, I mean, these are amazing reasons for someone to use Docker. But then for anyone that is watching that is still learning HTML, I don't think you would need Docker anytime soon. Just learn the basics of what you are learning, and then you can see if you can use Docker to improve your development process. So he said, I probably need a through Docker experience to get how things work, but I'm curious and understand how significant Docker is for local dev and testing. But are these significant production use cases?
Yes, I think Docker is not like a tool that is like in beta, has been around for a while.
Mhm.
The main use case of Docker is, let's say in layman terms, I'm talking, of course, now. The main goal of Docker is to put your application inside a box that you can replicate. So that's, let's say, Docker
Yeah.
in one line, explained to my mom. Then once your application is boxed, is containerized, this makes it very easy to deploy. And if it's something is easy to deploy, is also something easy to scale. It's easy to orchestrate, because once your web server is inside a box, then you can have 10 web servers to handle 1 million users instead of just 100,000. That's the production use case. To do this, there are different ways to do this. The most famous is Kubernetes. We're not talking about probably Kubernetes in this one, but that's an orchestrator of containers. Okay. So
Yeah.
the first step is to containerize the thing and put this in a box. Okay, and then let's say the first example you can do. I think I have the simplest Kubernetes video on the whole internet. I want to do this bold statement. And when you can try Kubernetes in 6 minutes, of course it's edited, but let's say 20 probably. And then probably you can understand what is behind all this scaling. Docker is all about production use cases, because it's the easiest way to create something scalable. unless you want to pay. Of course, if you have unlimited money, you can pay for a service, and then you no, just use Vercel, pay more money, and then it's fine. But this is not what developers
Yeah.
want. That's more like on the production, on the company side. And in the case, okay, let's not just do this because I don't know, we are getting millionaires anyway. Let's just pay more, and that's fine. But from a developer point of view, maybe we want to understand how the technology works. So that's the thing.
I 100% agree on that. So we have another question. Bob asks, can you talk about the relationship between containers and microservices for dynamically scalable compute application services?
Yes, of course. Here we are just talking, so that's we will just give a brief overview. I talked about
Yeah.
the containerization of an application. So if this concept is clear, let's say we wrote a web server and now this web server is not running anymore on just on our machine, just writing, I don't know, Python, manage, the port. I can't even remember the exact command now. But we can put this in Docker container. So the containers and microservices, I think they go hand in hand, because the concept of a microservice is that each, let's say, service does just one thing, which I think it's a good approach. Some people, they go crazy about microservices and they're like, even their breakfast has to be a microservice, and that's probably going a bit too a bit too far. That, like, I don't know, I need a service with two functions, I will use two services. So that's, because I think, and if I need to be honest, that sometimes, when you have the analogy that, like, everything is like you have a hammer and you want to use the hammer on everything. That's a similar concept. So probably people who are really into microservices, they like to overuse them just a bit. But the concept is that, if you have, like, I talked about this idea of having containers for different applications. Of course, in this case, doing this with containers, and using these microservices, having these microservices in separate boxes, and I don't know, maybe they connect with the API and something like that, is a great thing. And of course, like, we can, like, the fact of microservices, I think it has to make sense. It has to be like a real architectural decision, and not just do microservices because microservices are cool. So I'm a bit unpopular here compared to people who might think that microservices are like the way to live your life, Bob. And I think that's it for this one. So the containers can represent a single service. Let's say you can start from there, and then, maybe you can have. I can even go a bit deeper if you want. Let's say you have a service for login and a service to make a search on a website. Okay, if you have two different services, okay, in a period when you have many logins and less searches, you can have more services, more replicas on the login service. If you have more searches in a period, you can scale just as that single service. If you have just a single application and monolith that does everything, you need the replicas of that application. Now, the question here, and here we can stay until the midnight here, Sophia, if you want to talk about this, because we never get out of this. Because is it easier to have so many services than you have to maintain? Or is it better to just have that single web server that has everything and will just replicate that server? It depends on our application. If you have an application, for example, let's do a simple example. It has the the number of logins, I don't know, they spike on every weekend because, I don't know, for a reason you have a spike and you have 100 times more logins, just logins, during Saturday, because Sophia is promoting this. Okay. In that case,
Yeah.
you need probably a service, because then you want to scale just that service, not having 100 services with 100 search that you don't need. You can scale different services. This is the main use case. So for applications who have services, they have a different need over time. Then we can have another discussion. But let's say I will stop here, Bob. Let me know if there's answered your question.
Well, I think it has answered his question. Okay, so Bob, do let us know in the comments if question, and Ismail too. Do let us know if Fran answered the question. Okay, so while we're talking about Docker, um, a question just pops into my head, and yeah, okay. So now my question is, what is one misconception that you've heard about Docker, Rust, and Python that pisses you off?
Okay, do you want to do you have a specific order, or can I go in my order?
Oh yeah, you can go in your order.
Let's start with Python. I will try to see if I can piss you off in a single line. Python is too slow for serious applications.
What?
Are you pissed off?
Yeah.
Okay, you see, so it's working. So okay, so we can use this for example. This is a misconception because I think it's not true. It's more about the architectural patterns you use, and you can target and optimize the single bottlenecks. Okay, so this is the reason. So this is we can talk about this, and of course, if you spend all your time on Twitter, you probably have this idea that Python is just slow, and that's it. It's a meme, basically. But if you don't want to talk about memes, it's fine. I can also have a laugh. I can also make a meme and a joke about Python. If we are giving like a real technical answers, this is a misconception. Python can be very good, probably even better in some situations for the time, because it might be probably easier to that. Okay, thank you so much, Ismail. So this is Python. Let's go with Rust. Having like these compile thing and something called like borrow checker, basically all these checks of the things, it's really bad. Like you have this like as an obstacle, it's like it sounds like no bureaucracy, like something that is slows you. I think this is a very
Yeah.
misconception, because if you put a timer, and I would like to like if you put a timer on the time you spend understanding things, that's always 10 times the time that it can be for compiling. Because if the compiler makes me wait some seconds, but it gives me the exact answer, I don't know you, but I prefer to have to wait a couple of seconds, and maybe I can even do a sip of water, and then having something on point. Then getting up. When do we lose the time? When do we hate our life as a developer? When we waste the time, and people don't even know that we spent 4 hours on a
That's
bug.
true.
In that case, I feel that I waste some time. I mean, you never waste your time, because just by trying to understand things, how things working in development, probably you understand. You are learning, okay. But let's say that you have a deadline for tomorrow. That's not your goal to just to learn if you have a deadline with a job tomorrow. So you want to understand things. So you think that this slows you, but if it gives you the correct answer, it will always be better than you trying to figure out things. And let me know if you think that's, and of course, if you want to make meme or Rust is low, it's fine. The compiling time, but at least it gives good answers. It's like wanting like Google to just give you answer. Like, let's say that you want an AI that answers immediately, but with random stuff. It's useless. And especially when
Yeah.
and especially when things get more complicated. In that case, it's exponential, the time that we need to understand the things. That's a misconception. And as a Docker, I think I'll use the virtual machine. So Docker are just sort of virtual machines rebranded. I hate that. You can really piss me off in that case. I usually don't not argue on social media, but if you write like containers are just lightweight virtual machines, I will probably answer if I have time. Otherwise, I will probably just block you in that case, just to do things quick. It's not, but I think I already explained the reason. So go and check the previous
Yeah.
explanation.
Now I know the tweet that I can make to piss you off.
Perfect. I'm exposing my
Yeah,
weaknesses, but then I also know how I can piss you off because I saw you really pissed. So that about Python. So perfect.
fair point.
I have plenty. I can make.
Yeah,
I
so
will answer with a meme about Python, and I'm sure we can find some.
Sure. So when you were talking about the misconception in Rust, you brought about debugging. So in Rust, yeah, is it easier to debug Rust codes than it is to debug Python codes? Because you talked about traceback, and yes, and sometimes I get lost trying to understand the traceback error. But since I haven't played around with Rust, I really don't know how debugging works in Rust.
I'm sorry, Sophia, but it's easier to debug in Rust. From my experience, this is one of the. I'm sorry, but yeah, you know my weaknesses now, and you can try. I would like to have the opinion, even the chat opinion of people who wrote both Python and Rust code, but not because Python is bad, just because Rust I think is better than many other programming languages in this debugging thing. And because of the way, because it has been created in this way to really support you in that part. So that's, it's like it has been trained for this. Here, this is one of the strong points of Rust. Does it mean that everyone should write Rust code? Yes, I'm joking. Does it mean that everyone should write Rust code? Not as a must, but you can try. If you don't trust me, don't trust influencers, or don't trust people who just tell you things. Try and see. Bob is here with me, and I'm not forcing Bob to say this. Try and see and check what the compiler is doing. It's like the person who tells you, like, you should really go to that restaurant, it's very good. You don't have to trust me.
Yeah.
Go and taste it by yourself, and then you will let me know. I will be probably right. So go to that restaurant and try if that's good. It probably is, if it has so many reviews, But you can always give it a try. But the reviews on the Rust debugging, they are 4.9, so, and it has like hundreds of thousands. So check it out.
I mean, fair points because I have joined a couple of your live streams, and debugging in Rust seems to be so much easier than debugging in Python. So everyone should give Rust a try.
I just screenshotted it.
Okay, so all right. Okay, so we will be wrapping up in a couple of minutes, and before we wrap up, I just have two more questions, and the first one is now when we're talking about Python environment and Rust environments, which one is easier to manage um, outside of just debugging? But is it easier to manage a Python environment or to manage a Rust compiler environment, and
Mhm.
why?
Yeah, okay, so I think we can answer with the senior. It depends. I think if you are an expert in Python, you know what you're doing. You know what an environment is. You know how to set it up. You know how to change things. If you're not a Python developer, probably you don't know what we are talking about. So it depends how much you are
Sure.
expert in Python. So if you're an expert in Python, you know the things because you had to do with these things. So virtual environments, you know to set it up. If you are new to Python, you can say this is something that might be new because it's like one of the, say, Python features. So it really depends in this case. And so this is about Python. You also ask about Rust. Rust about what? The cross compiling.
Yes. Yes, yes.
Yeah, I mean, the cross compiling is a feature that Rust has. I'll be quick here. So basically, you can. I think you're talking about, like, you can create the same application in different language for different operating systems. In this case, cross
Yeah,
compiling.
more Yes,
let's
yes,
say.
more like how to handle that
Yeah,
in cross
I
compiling
think that
programs.
okay. So the cross compiling thing, if we're talking about this, is the act of like I don't know. Let's create I don't know, like creating a Linux application writing Rust code on a Windows machine. Is this the question? Okay, yeah. In this case, I think it is something I did in the past. I did this for a talk. I'll try to be quick here. If you want to run Rust in Docker, probably the best way is to run the Rust in a Linux because Docker images, they are based on an operating system. Mind blowing, yes, of course. So Docker still uses an operating system, of course, just a bit lightweight. I prepared the talk, and usually I code on a Windows machine just because this is what I have here. But then the Rust application, I don't want this to run on a Windows machine. I want this to run on a, for example, Linux operating system. So what I did is that I made the build based on the Linux, a Linux kernel that I can't run here on this Windows machine, but then I can run
Yeah,
this using Docker. So basically, to run, I can, of course, I can create a .exe file, but I wanted to create a Docker image. In that case, I will switch to a build for Linux, even if I'm on a Windows machine. I don't know if this does make sense. Otherwise, let me know. I'll probably should share my screen in that case. Cross compiling, I think it's very good in Rust. You can target different architectures and different operating system when you do the build. Basically, the cargo build has some options to build for different operating systems. If this is this was the question, let's say.
yeah, it is. So Bob has a question, but I was about to ask you to show your screen and
No,
give us a more visual. But if you can,
it
that's
will take too
fine.
much time. We will go beyond it.
Yeah.
It will be the Python quarter. Let's say for hours instead of hours. So they will have to change the title of the series. So no.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you
So
so much, Bob, for
Bob,
asking this at 1 hour and 2 minutes. You could have asked this a bit earlier, but I'll try my best. But Bob, this is not how you behave when Sophia is about to say we are about to wrap up and you boom. You're check this question, Bob.
very, very true. So he asked, how can I deploy a Rust application to run in a container on a third-party
Mhm.
infrastructure provider? And do you have any cloud infrastructure service provider
Yes,
recommendation?
yes, Bob. Is that annoying student that does the question like at the end of the lesson? I know you. I know you are.
Like,
You are that annoying mate, Bob. I try to be quick here. How can I deploy a Rust application to run in a container? You dockerize a Rust application, and usually when you dockerize a Rust application, you do this on a Linux machine. So you with a target, because usually the Rust images. Maybe you need to invite me so we can talk more about this. So um, how can I deploy a Rust application to run in a container? I think that you should switch this question, which is like you should create the Rust application, run your Rust application on your local machine with cargo run. Then you dockerize the Rust application, and then you have the container. Once you have the container, you are a happy developer because you can use, and then your problem will just switch on choosing the infrastructure provider. Now, we can talk like for hours about this. I think very good services might be Azure, AWS, but also DigitalOcean. Let's say I think probably the least expensive one, also the first one I used, on DigitalOcean you can run a droplet for €5 a month, and then with Docker. So you can just to test it out. Of course, you will not have the quickest server ever, but this is, for example, how I deployed my first Docker services. So you buy something. This is not sponsored by DigitalOcean, sadly. This is this live stream, but you can, for example, you can try with that. Um, this is like asking for which restaurant I should go. We have different preferences. AWS is very established, but it can also be very expensive. Azure, similar.
yeah.
DigitalOcean is a bit more limited, but it's less expensive. Once you have the container, you are happy. because you can create a GitHub repository, people can try it out, and then you'll have this issue. But that there are people like who have this as a niche, like explaining you different infrastructures, which one is better. I think it's more important to containerize the applications and having something that can run everywhere. And then there are people who, on Twitter, they just post about AWS. So I will probably have to follow those people to understand which are the pros and cons. There is not a perfect solution, otherwise we will not have a different market with different options. We just have that, to have a clear winner, and then everyone except like the super nerds would use that. So Bob, your answer your question is unanswered, but containerize the Rust application and then let me know, and you can ask your friends to run it, and then you'll have the problem of deployment, which is a different story. I'll probably start with DigitalOcean if you want the practical answer, okay?
All right. Okay, so my last question is, if you could improve one thing in Rust, Python, and Docker, what would it be?
Okay, let's go again with Python first. I think a way how we could improve Python is improve all the CPU-bound parallelism. So improve this, because at some point in probably we might want to try it out this. You can try something called the C Python. You can try, and so I will improve that part, because I think having a language that at some point needs to scale on multiple cores now, it's a must. It's not that you can't do. You ask me what we can improve. Okay, so that's it. Docker. I think Docker should have a bit more intuitive debugging when we have, for example, when we're doing like multiple builds. If we don't know what we're doing, we might end up like fooling our drive. So I think you should have a sort of like, you should handle this more. Otherwise, you say, okay, what is this? Because Docker is basically doing stuff behind the scenes, and I would highly recommend to type Docker prune like once a month. Like when you clean your desk, when you clean your house, you do also Docker prune. So it's like you should be embedded in this process of like cleaning your house once a week, let's say, deep cleaning. About Rust, faster compile time. So if we can improve that, which is the downside, we'll have then to delete all the memes, but it will be worth it. So in the case, we'll have to do this. But I think these are the things that can be improved. Now, does it have to be improved? Maybe it's fine. We can even like switch to other technologies. I prefer to have. I would not like have a faster compile time on Rust at the expense of the performance, final performance. It depends on what you want. So if we can improve it, it will be great. But for now, I think it's fine.
Awesome. And this concludes today's episode of Python Hour, where we get to talk about Rust, Docker, and Python. Oh, sorry, one more question, and this will be a simple yes or no. Can Rust, Python, and Docker work together?
I was waiting for this question, and I highly recommend you and everyone in the chat to check PYO3, which is basically a way to use Python and Rust together. So to have like direct interoperability. It's a project. Basically, you can create native Python modules in Rust. PYO3. You can also make a video on this. Maybe it's interesting. I will write this in the chat.
Yeah,
but it's PYO3.
I just saw the GitHub.
Check it out. It's not a small project. It has many stars, and it's not like a side project of someone crazy in Norway who is doing this as a joke, of course, because it's always some guy from Norway. But you should check this one, and then you can explore. Probably it's even worth like a Twitter stuff.
Yeah. No, I think I just have the idea to try this out on a live stream, probably next week or in 2 weeks' time. But thank you very much. And Bob, no, we will not answer your question again. No,
it's funny how Bob can go from asking about like a microservices deployment, favorite infrastructure, and then what's your favorite coffee blend? So Bob is the best. Like you never know what question we will have because it seems like another person now. But this is probably will need a different video, a full coffee crash course. Lavazza is nice. This is not sponsored, sadly. I would love if you are a coffee brand. Let me know and I will test it. I will make a honest reaction of your coffee.
Well, I don't really have like a brand of coffee. I just take Nescafe because that's what's accessible
It's
to
good.
me. Yes, I don't have a brand. But no, Bob, I will not answer your question. Okay, so thank you very much, Fran. This has been fun and really interactive. And to be honest, I would have to rewatch this stream and jot things down because I couldn't write and engage at the same time, but this has been super, super fun. In case you all are curious about Rust, you really want to know more about Rust, Francesco has a 3 hours, 3 hours plus course on Rust, and he still has a playlist on Rust, so you can check out his YouTube channel here. Link is on the screen. And he, like I said, he has a book that is coming out on Rust, and he has a couple of Rust articles and cheat sheets and all other things that you can probably find on his YouTube channel or his Twitter channel. I think I forgot to link his Twitter channel too,
It's fine.
but then I will be linking it to
Once
the
they go on
video
YouTube, then
description.
it'll go to Twitter, so it's fine.
I Yeah, sure. So thank you. I was about to say thank you, Rost. Thank you,
It's
Fran,
fine.
for the stream. Hopefully we get to do this again.
Yes.
So
Thank you.
until next time, thank you everyone for joining, and do all to subscribe to the channel if you are watching on YouTube. If you're not watching on YouTube, just if you're watching from LinkedIn, click my profile and you should be able to see the YouTube link too. So until next time, bye. And then you can also make suggestion on what topics I can explore for this Python hour series as well. So,
Ciao.
bye.
Bye.